All right, there we go. Let's get everybody live so we can start the show. Got the spinning wheels going. 1, 2, 3. All right, welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday night, the 5th of March, and it's time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendall, and joined by, as always, Carl Dumler. Carl, how you doing? It's good to see you again on our Tuesday evening rendezvous.
Yeah, no, things are good. Just cruising along for another week and got done with the combine, getting to see these guys get some running drills in and get some times to what we see on the tape, and so that's always fun. And so I've been my kid watched a little bit with me, and now he's like, "Dad, teach me how to be fast." So now we're working on explosive drills in our house.
Nice.
And yeah, that's what everybody does, right, with their kids.
Tell them to jump up on the table from the floor. There's some box drills there. That's right. That's the way to go. That won't end with stitches or anything. Yeah, no, great combine, a lot of fun. Last time we talked, we kind of previewed it and everything, looked ahead. Do you have any big takeaways from the combine? Could be prospect wise, could be Broncos specific related. Anything regrets, things you're looking forward to, something that changed your mind, anything like that.
I guess one of them would be, man, I wish the Broncos didn't need a quarterback, in the sense of like having the offensive tackles test as well as they did, wide receivers test as good as they did, edge rushers test as good as they did. And I'm sitting there at pick 12 going, man, there's going to be a great one that falls to that spot. And it's rough to think the Broncos might be kind of stuck. I mean, they're not forced to take a quarterback, but there's going to be a little bit of desperation there for the position. So that's the only thing for me that I was a little bit like, oh man, we're missing out on some really athletic players this year.
It does remind me of something Scott said in 2021, where I was very quarterback or bust with the 9th overall pick, if at all possible, just because I thought the Broncos they had a lot of extra picks that year. They had a young roster. They were an ascending team, which I'm not sure roster wise they are right now. But you look at the landscape and it's like, okay, you're either going to get a chance at a quarterback, which is exciting, and you have hope for that. And the train doesn't leave the station until you have a quarterback. That's true. Or you're going to have a chance at a really good player. So it's not the end of the world. I do not think the Broncos they're looking for a quarterback, but I don't know if they're quarterback draft desperate. They're certainly hunting. And if there's somebody they like, they're going to try to go get them. But they're going to be able to walk away with a good player. And I think it's pretty good. What did Peyton say? They have 12 to 15 guys they like. I went through it and I think I listed 20 where I'm like, yeah, I really like these top 20. Now there's going to be things that they have that I don't have as far as background checks, medical checks, and maybe there's something there, scheme fit, that they don't rate the guy as highly. But 15 offensive players, 5 defensive players. I'm like, yeah, if they took any of these guys at pick 12, I would get it. I would understand. Yeah. I'd be excited. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? I mean, you're a wide receiver guy, so I mean, what a showing of the wide receivers. It's kind of becoming almost a yearly trend, which might even devalue them somewhat as well. But you don't even have Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. They consider the top 2 of the top 3 wide receivers in this class test. But just overall, a lot of guys really stand out there. It's my big takeaway is, man, I'm really happy Sean Payton is here. What I would give to have our 2nd round pick right now, because there is going to be a really talented wide receiver, probably wide receiver available with a Broncos pick in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I was watching some more receivers today, actually. You know, I kind of like for some of those skill positions to get some combine numbers before I really dig too deep into some of them. I mean, I start watching wide receivers, the top guys, but these mid-tier guys, I like to get a little bit more numbers on them. And I'm still happy. I think there's going to be some guys in the 3rd, 4th round that I'm going to like. Maybe not love, like some of these 1st round guys. You know, Dunze had himself a day there at the combine. You know, I think he's secured himself as a top 10 pick. I can't see how he's getting out of there. Yeah. Unless it really is those 4 quarterbacks that go and offensive tackles go like crazy because everybody's panicking that they're going quick off the board. You know, it's the only way I could maybe see it, but I think he tested too well for that. So yeah, no, it's going to be a really good wide receiver class, which kind of fits with our topic today, that the Broncos really might be looking to replace possibly 3 wide receivers, the top 3 guys on this roster from this past season. Well, not even this past season because of injury. but still the top 3 guys heading into this year that the Broncos were hoping for. And so I'm hoping they can get into this draft some way, somehow at the wide receiver position to help out for the future.
Yeah, it should be really interesting to follow, and there's going to be a lot of options here, and just a really good class in terms of the offensive side of the ball. And we got David McElrath coming in saying, "Good evening, Broncos country, bringing the excitement. Good to see you, David. Hope you're doing well, and always appreciate you coming in and saying hello and supporting the show. I mean, gosh, we would not be doing what we're doing if it wasn't for patrons like you. So appreciate you coming in and supporting us. We got David Youngkin coming in here saying, even if Sutton wants to leave, let him. We need the cap." So the topic today, excuse me, sunship in the throat. Courtland Sutton, a little cryptic on Twitter and social media. Not the first time this offseason that's happened, but with the moving of Russell Wilson, all the wide receivers tweeting out the fingers crossed emoji. And there's going to be a shakeup here at the wide receiver spot. I think that Sutton, it's got to be frustrating as a pass catcher, dependent on the quarterback, that it's continuously this revolving door, the chemistry out there. Sutton's coming off a 10 touchdown season. He was great last year. So having to reestablish that chemistry and everything is going to be frustrating, I'm sure. But I don't think that you're just letting Sutton walk out the door. And I think that, as we talked about earlier, how good this wide receiver class is, I don't think you're going to get the return on Sutton that makes sense as far as moving him. You'd be moving him just to move him. Honestly, I think the return is going to be that low. It's not because he's bad, but it's because I think the league views this wide receiver class very well, obviously. And that would you give up a 3rd round pick for Sutton, or would you rather just get the rookie contract and take a shot on a guy in the 3rd round? I think a lot of people would rather do that rather than trade for 28-year-old Courtland Sutton with a 3rd round pick.
Right. Well, and it's the problem here that I see with Sutton. How much do you view him a really big part of your future? Because let's say you do take a rookie quarterback this year. Probably you're hoping year 3 is where this guy really begins to emerge. Well, at that point, Sutton is 31. Mm-hmm. He's not probably here. Even if you sign him to an extension this offseason, I'm guessing at that point, you're probably looking to move on. And so is it worth keeping him around to help your young quarterback develop for these next couple of years? This is what you have to weigh in this whole situation. And on top of that, you got to question a little bit, okay, he's not happy right now with the whole Russell Wilson getting cut thing. From what I understand, they were actually really good friends. He was the one player that Russell Wilson told what was going on during the bye week after the Chiefs game when the Broncos were coming to Russell Wilson about the, changing up his contract thing. So those two have a very close relationship. And Russell Wilson, he's one of those types. If you're in the inner circle, you love that guy. Like, he's going to take care of you. He's going to be there. He's going to be a great friend. If you're on the outside, you probably hate the guy. We see a lot of the players from Seattle, especially on the defense, they were on the outside. They were not big Russell Wilson fans. They've loved that he's had these last couple of years of struggle. It just kind of validates some of their thoughts on this guy. But those players that, like I said, were really close to him, man, those guys, they'll do about anything for him. And I think Courtland Sutton kind of falls into that category. Tim Patrick falls into that category. And so, they're hurt right now. Mm-hmm. I hope in the end they can figure out, hey, this is a business. This is part of it. And things were not working well as oil and water between Russ and Peyton. But we'll have to see how that plays out. If they want out, I'm probably not going to fight it too much, just because I don't see them as a huge part of the future. But part of the show right now, we have KB82 coming in with a $4.99 saying, now that Russ is gone, we should take the best offensive tackle with the 12th pick. Legit line turns game managers into 2 legit threats with those few extra seconds. What do you think about that?
I definitely think offensive tackle is on the table for the Broncos, but we're waiting for the Garrett Bowles domino to fall. I am pretty confident to say that he will not play on the current structure of his contract. And it seemed like before the cap announcement of what is an additional $13 million that bumped up compared to expectation, that I don't know if the Broncos had the room to make it work. But now you're dealing with an extra $13 million in the immediacy for the cap space. Maybe the Broncos can bring back Garrett Bowles. And if they do, if you're paying Garrett Bowles a new contract or a restructured contract with incentives in there, and Also have McGlinchey on there as well. Maybe you're not as forced to go offensive tackle at that spot because, I mean, there's not really a guard spot available either, right? Where it's like, okay, we'll have you at guard for a year and then we'll kick you out. I mean, the Dolphins did that with Laramie Tunsil when they drafted him. I think he played left guard his rookie season and then been an awesome left tackle since then. So I'm not against it still. I think even maybe this is me being so value position dependent and taking advantage of good classes. But if like the best player on the board is an offensive tackle at 12 overall and you can't really move back, I don't even care if they're the backup competing year one because odds are there's going to be an injury or maybe you flip Bulls after that. Who knows? But I just take guys at value positions. Offense tackle is hard though because it's not a rotational spot like wide receiver, cornerback, edge rusher where it's like, oh, he's second string. He's still going to get plenty of snaps. Not so much with offensive tackle unless you have an injury, but I think that offensive tackle is very much on the table, but we are waiting on that Garrett Bowles domino. What happens with Bowles? If he's gone, traded, open season, absolutely. Wouldn't be so much as Kenneth mentions as offensive tackle or bust, like edge rusher is viable there. Wide receiver, tight end, Brock Bowers is viable there. Quarterback, of course, is viable there. But it's definitely on the table, and it is a heck of a class. And after Joe Alt, I think it's a pick your flavor. I could see 4 different guys ranked as other teams' number one. You could have J.C. Latham up there if you're looking for a power guy. Amarius Mims is a freak if you're not worried about the smaller sample size. You could have Olu Fashanu, who's probably the best pass protector. I'm kind of concerned about the hand size, as stupid as that sounds, but he might slip a bit. And I'm missing somebody. Oh, yeah, and Talise Fuaga, who some teams might view as guard, but I think he's going to be a heck of a tackle also. So really unbelievable tackle class, and that doesn't even get to the second tier. That said, the Broncos are in a weird spot because I do not expect a competent body type at tackle to make it to 76. I think they are going to be bone dry by pick 50 or 60. I just do not expect there to be it's going to be a good run at the beginning, but I think it's going to fall off a cliff, probably end of the second round. So if you want one, you might have to do some maneuvering or take one at 12. It falls off just because there's not the body types that work at the position with the combination of size, length, and athleticism.
All right, we got KB82 coming back in again with another $4.99 super, asking the question, with Sutton scoring 10 touchdowns last year, does he warrant a second or third round pick and draft compensation? I'm going to say no. And part of it is, like you said, this wide receiver class is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You'd be paying for a guy that, like I said, 28 years old, has had a couple of serious injuries in his career already, has a bigger contract. So you're going to be paying a lot of money. You're probably going to have to extend him because I think he only has this year left on his deal.
1 year left. Yep.
Yeah. And so you're probably going to have to extend him. Are you willing to do that for a second and third round pick? And the other part of this is there's still a couple decent names that are going to be on free agency as well. Would you rather get them for free without having to trade any draft compensation?
Free.
Okay, free. You're just giving him a contract. Let me say that. Compared to giving a contract and a draft pick for Courtland Sutton. Is he worth that much? So I think that both quarterbacks, Jerry Judy and Courtland Sutton, are going to find their market not as strong as we would hope. And so if you're going to be trading them, it's more because you just either, like I said, you don't see them as part of your future, and 2, you're trying to get some of that money off of the books to move forward.
And I was incorrect. I mixed up the Tim Patrick deal with the Courtland Sutton deal. So Tim Patrick signed a 3-year deal 2 years ago, and Sutton signed a 4-year deal. So there's still 2 years of control left with Courtland Sutton, but still a very flexible contract for the Broncos. I think that it's reasonable for the Broncos to ask for a third-round pick, and I would not move him unless you can get a third-round pick back for him. But I just don't know if the market's going to work that way for him in this cycle, because there's so many wide receivers. So we'll see. I think it's also possible. I mean, you're talking about Garrett Bowles and Courtland Sutton. We talk about how good the tackles and the wide receivers are in the draft, but maybe the draft doesn't work that way for a team. Maybe they're one of the ones who they want to tackle and musical chairs song stops and they don't have a seat. Okay, well, now I'm calling the Broncos about Garrett Bowles, Courtland Sutton. What does it look like now? You're talking 2025 draft capital then, but I think there's a possibility for, especially if they don't touch the contracts, for post-draft movement. Now, that does mean you have to sit on your hands a little bit more with free agency, but the Broncos might be kind of doing that somewhat anyways. So again, there's a lot of movable pieces. We're going to find out a lot, though, in the next 2 weeks. Michael Ronquillo, the Ronk, thank you so much. We always appreciate you coming in. Ronk Man says, good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Always good to see you, Michael. Hope you're doing well. Hope it's nice and warm out there in Tucson. We also got Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, good evening, Nick, Carl, and Deacon Scott. How would you guys rank the following edge rushers? Leatu from UCLA, Jared Verse from Florida State, and then Dallas Turner from Alabama. The opposite order of you placed them there. That would be my listing there. Carl might disagree with me there, but Turner is the youngest of the group. He's the best athlete of the group. He's the most versatile of the group. Verse is really powerful, but he's older. Not really a bender, so to speak. And Leatu, I think he's going to be a designated pass rusher. I don't know how much value he's bringing you on first and second down. I think he gets crumpled in the run game and doesn't really have a lot of length, and he's not the athlete that those two guys are. So I think Leatu is closer to Chop Robinson than he is Jared Verse and Dallas Turner for me. There's a lot of value as a designated pass rusher, but like you have that guy in Benito, and he's better at it, I think, in terms of the actual explosiveness. So more versatile too. So I'm going Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, and the Leatu, and there could be some scheme stuff. Maybe you have Verse over Turner, turnover over Verse, but I don't know, man. The top two are pretty good. I'm going with the more athletic and younger guy though, which is Turner.
So I have Turner at the top. Like you said, being that younger guy, there's still even more room for him to grow, and he was really good this past year. So I think the sky's the limit for that guy. It wouldn't surprise me if he became a top 5 edge rusher in football by the time everything is said and done. I would have Leatu as my number 2 guy. I like those technicians. Mm-hmm. I just see those guys coming into the league doing well early and often in their career. And I think we've seen kind of a resurgence of some of those guys. You know, for a while, it was like, we got to find the great athlete. And I think here recently you've seen, like the Bosa boys. They weren't the most athletic. They're strong, but they're not the best at, turning the edge or anything like that. I think if you look at like TJ Watt, he's not the greatest bender around the edge, but he's technically sound. His hand fighting is incredible. And so, you look at those kind of guys, I could see Leatu falling into some of those same categories of winning just because he's such a better technician than anybody else in this class.
My one thing I'll push back against you there is I come back to the early down value. I think he would early on, he might even be a legitimate liability setting the edge. And those other guys are glass eaters on early downs as far as setting the edge and run stoppers, which I don't see with Leatu. And the thing we didn't talk about also is the medicals. That's going to take, depending on team by team, but some teams might have him completely off the board. We don't know what that's like. So that's a factor. That's the wild card there for me. Definitely separates them. But I definitely hear what you're saying. Leatu is a craftsman with his hands and really good value as far as getting after the pass rusher. I mean, that's the ace trait on the defensive side of the ball. Outside of quarterback, getting after the quarterback as an edge rusher is probably number 1. Well, I guess probably a little more value in the interior, but you find more guys at the edge that can do that.
Right.
But I'm looking for the twitch and I'm looking for the 3-down ability, and Verse and Turner are just different planets as far as the complete package on the field, in my opinion. I mean, Turner's small, but you go watch him set the edge. It is like violent, right? You see that the length and the power and the 6'2", okay, leverage. I mean, it's a violent edge setter. So that's my big difference.
Yeah, I get that. And I go back and forth on it quite a bit between those 3. And I'd be happy with any of them coming here to Denver. I think they'd be your number 1 edge rusher day 1 by far. It's not even close. And I think they all 3 stand a very good chance of being highly productive in the NFL in different ways. And so, you've talked about a little bit with the offensive linemen, flavor of the week, whatever you want. I think it can be a little bit because each of those guys bring a little something different to the plate, obviously. So, but we got, the Papa coming in, Darren Kindle with the $9.99 saying, good evening, guys. Always keep the positive thoughts moving forward. Definitely appreciate that. And always good to see you in here.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Hope you're doing well. I'll get back to your text later. I didn't have a chance to talk with the old ball and chain about all that stuff. So appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. Keeping moving forward. So what exactly has gone down with the Broncos and Courtland Sutton? Can you give the listeners the play-by-play? Obviously, people kind of lose their mind when Judy does some of the cryptic tweet stuff, but we've had now 2 incidences with Sutton this year. I don't know if they're feeding off each other or whatever. I mean, Sutton shouldn't get a pure pass on that. I guess he's been more productive, so he's going to get a little bit more of a pass. But what's been going on with Courtland Sutton?
So he sent out a couple tweets, Instagrams, whatever you want to call it, pretty much showing he's a little upset about this whole Russell Wilson situation. And then on top of that, he deleted the Broncos from his Twitter, or from all of his social medias, I think, if I remember right. And we see this happen. Players do this all the time. You know, Justin Fields has already done it with the Bears. You know, pretty much anytime a player is in some kind of contract negotiation or getting ready to hit free agency or anything like that, this seems to be kind of a tactic that they use. Whether it's a good decision or not, I can't really tell you, but it is kind of a way to put a little more pressure on the team of, hey, we're ready to move on. You know, yeah. you don't, I hate to say it this way, you don't own us. We can make this decision that we want to go somewhere else, and we're willing to push that boundary if we need to. And like I said, sometimes it's a contract negotiation. If it's not, we really actually want to move on. It's just, we want you to up your offer. Like what you came in with was an insult. And so this is our way of showing you how upset we are with that kind of offer. So either come with something better, or we're willing to say, hey, we want to trade. So I don't think it's completely saying Courtland Sutton is gone by any means. I think it's just showing he's frustrated with the situation. He's frustrated, you know, since he came to Denver, they have not been a winning organization. So I'm sure that weighs on these players quite a bit. You know, they want to go win. I get that. But I also understand for the Broncos, like I said, they're looking at what is our future and who really is going to be a part of this. And some of these pricey veterans, because here's the thing, is all three of these receivers, they're pretty pricey from what compared to what they're actually bringing to the roster. You know, can we really trust them to be a part of that process to get us back to a winning organization when all they've done is produce losing here? Now, it's not all their faults by any means, but they also haven't really helped a whole lot either.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Sutton. I get being upset in the moment with all this going on, and it's, you know, emotional stuff. We can sit here and be, you know, detached from it, but they put in the work together. They try to win, and when stuff like that happens, it's frustrating. And I'm sure he feels some of it wasn't his fault, but probably some of it was his fault. You know how he feels, but I think we're gonna get over it in the end. And the Broncos still have him under contractual control. And despite how many wide receivers are coming in to the league, Carl, in the draft and everything, these guys are still getting paid. Teams are still really wanting wide receivers. It's not enough just to have one. You need 3 or 4 nowadays. Kind of like starting pitchers. Like, oh, if you have one, go get another one. Stack them. You need to be able to go out there and do those things. So I think that I'm not too upset about the Sutton stuff, just like I'm not too upset about Judy tweeting any of that stuff or whatever. I mean, sometimes I guess I can be a little upset if it's, you know, about the role in the game itself when you're making mistakes at the same time, but I don't really read too much into it. And I don't think that it means that Sutton is imminently gone or anything like that either. I think that based on what Mike Kliss said and what I've heard is that if anybody in the wide receiver room outside of Tim Patrick is gone, it's probably Jerry Judy. And unfortunately, it's not going to be a trade value that is going to be anything Broncos country likes. You might be even talking about a day 3 pick swap. Now, a lot of that can be moved depending on how much cap the Broncos can eat. I believe it's different with because it's a 5th-year option. I'm not sure if it works exactly the same, but I think they can probably choose to eat some of that cap and then get a better pick out of it in the end. But I'm expecting at best something like Judy and a 6 for a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, I agree. It's, again, you've got a great wide receiver class. Jerry Judy has not produced anywhere close to what they're going to have to pay him. He's got 1 year of cost. Well, it's not even cost control because you're paying him pretty decent money for that 5th-year option.
It's costly control.
Yeah, there you go. And so you're not wanting to commit to this guy long-term at this point. You're not going to be handing him this great long-term deal. I just got done talking to somebody. They said, oh, it was a red flag for Russell Wilson to demand a contract extension along with the trade. Like, that happens a lot. That's not something uncommon in the NFL. If you're trading for a guy, especially a lot of picks, usually you're offering a contract extension as part of that, because you're not just giving away first round picks for a guy that's going to be here for a year or two and then gone.
Yeah.
Now, yes, we could argue how everything has played out and it's not great, but I don't see that as a problem. With Jerry Judy, again, you're trading and then you're going to hope that he can turn into something better, and then you can pay him. Like you're going to just see what he is for a year. You're not going to give him this 4-year deal.
And also, I mean, you can just look back. We heard what Sean Payton said at the press conference, talking about wanting to get Mims more involved. And unfortunately, him and Judy play the same role. That sounds like a tick being potentially gone for Judy. And last offseason, the Broncos aggressively pursued wide receivers on the open market. They were players for Adam Thielen, which happy that didn't happen. They were players for Alan Lazard as well. So definitely, I think that you can say that Payton and or Payton want to remake the room somewhat. So Mims is here. He's the only one for sure that's going to be back. I think Sutton's going to be back just because I think he's more valuable on the team than off. And you're not going to get as much cap savings as you would with Judy, but we'll see. There is definitely going to be some turnover, and despite the Broncos not having a lot of capital in terms of cap space and draft picks, there'll be some new faces in that wide receiver room and some current ones gone. Justin Massey coming in here over on Facebook with a beautiful picture of the family out there. Good to see you, Justin. Thanks for coming in on your Tuesday night. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're getting a break. Says, let's the Broncos sign Cousins and give him a cap-friendly deal and backdoor it with a huge Walmart deal. He'd be a perfect guy for the Walmart commercials. He would be. I can picture Kirk, in the Walmart greeter vest out there doing some fist pumps, saying, looking at checking all the receipts, like, "Oh, you love it, you love it." And like that'd be great. As far as he really wants sounds like a pretty much 100% guaranteed contract. And I think he wants 3 years as well. That was what was being talked about coming out of the combine. I don't know if the Broncos can structure it a way where that works. I'm not a cap renaissance man by any means. I have a rudimentary understanding, but when it's 100% guaranteed, I don't know how you can split that across so much. I'm sure there's roster and signing bonus that you can do some stuff there. But the issue with the Broncos is you're not out of the cap hell until 26. So it's like, how can you even do that on a 3-year contract?
Right. So yeah, you would add void years to the contract. So it'd be a 3-year deal with 2 extra years that are not actually ones he's going to play on. And so in many ways, what you're doing is you're extending all this dead money. So you get out of the Wilson dead money and go straight into the Kirk Cousins dead money. I'm not sure that's the greatest business practice out there. I get it. Like, Cousins would be an incredible fit with what Sean Payton loves to do as a quarterback. Him coming off an Achilles, being as old as he is, I'm not sure how much I'm really excited about that kind of plan at this point, especially handing him a 100% guaranteed contract coming off a serious injury. I wouldn't mind it, just because then you can do whatever you want with that pick 12. That's the great thing that you get there, where you have the quarterback position figured out right off the bat. Now, from what I understand, it does sound like Atlanta's very interested in him. They have plenty of room to go out there and make some moves. I was reading something earlier today that some people thought that they saw Kirk Cousins in Atlanta looking at houses with his family. I don't know how true or false that actually is. I'm just telling you what I've heard out there. So I can see the Broncos getting interested. I just think that he's shown throughout his career he wants to go for the higher contract. And I don't blame him. I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing about him. I'm just saying that seems to be the way he goes. And I don't think the Broncos can be that team for him.
Yeah, I see Jared Ferguson saying Cousins never won anything mediocrity defined, terrible. I think he's, borderline top 10 quarterback, and was playing some of his best football of his career recently, and I think he'd be a good scheme fit. But I don't think the Broncos are not Kirk Cousins away from toppling Patrick Mahomes. If this was like, a 49ers team level of talent on the Broncos besides the quarterback, then yeah, go get Kirk Cousins. We're going for it now. But I just don't see them that kind of team right now. So unfortunately, it's probably not going to happen. Also, just Atlanta makes a lot of sense. They're a team that they have the 8th pick. They definitely need another wide receiver, as crazy as that is. But you got Kyle Pitts going to be healthier this year. Drake London's a wide receiver 1. Bijan Robinson, a good offensive line, and a Kevin O'Connell, who did so great with Kirk Cousins. Well, the guy that replaced him in for the Rams is Zach Robinson, who's now the offensive coordinator out there in Atlanta. So I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense. Also, Kirk Cousins' wife's from Atlanta. It's just it adds up. I think it's going to be Atlanta all the way. For the Broncos, you're probably talking bargain bin kind of stuff. Your Jacoby Brissett's, your Gardner Minshew's, your Sam Darnold's. Nothing anybody's going to get too excited about. Or Jarrett Stidham, who's already in house. So I mean, if it's not a rookie quarterback, it's probably something like that, which doesn't get anybody excited. I get it. I understand why fans get so prickled when I say something like that or mention that, but it's kind of probably where you're at right now. We got William James Baker coming in saying, good morning, London calling. All right. I was like, what the heck? Good morning. Get your coffee. We're flipping here. I'm typically the morning man here. As Williams didn't do the combine, talking about Caleb Williams, does this affect where he is picked in the draft? I don't think it is going to be he's going to go 1. Now, the question is the Bears or the Commanders, but he's going to go 1. If 8 quarterbacks are picked before us, do you think we deal Dion and take someone else later or later at quarterback, get some additional picks and get edge and tackle? If 8 quarterbacks are taken before the Broncos pick at 12, there's going to be an unbelievable wide receiver tackle available there that you're going to run with. 8 picks before it's not happening.
I mean, MHJ, Joe Alt,
Neighbors, Odunze.
Yeah, one of those 2 gone. So then you've got your pick of everybody else. Oh, man. Yeah. I would be, honestly, I'd be jumping for joy. I know means the Broncos missed out on their quarterback, but that means truly a top 5 talent fell to the Broncos at pick 12. And to pass on that would be ludicrous at that point. Or some team is trading up with a really great offer to the Broncos at that point.
But are they offering it for a non-quarterback? That's you get that inflation, that bonus for when it's a quarterback's talking there. Maybe somebody would, but I might just sit there and say, I'm taking Neighbors, Odunze, Harrison, Alt, whatever, Dallas Turner. I don't know. That's probably where I'm leaning.
I'm happy either way.
Yeah. But that's not happening with the 8 quarterback. I mean, gosh, I can't say it's not happening until it's passed, but it would be unbelievable. I mean, I would be shocked if 5 quarterbacks went off the board before the Broncos pick at 12. But we'll see. And again, if Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta, that's one of the teams off the quarterback market. So, or if he goes back to Minnesota, another team off the quarterback market. So a lot of movement here. We want to see what happens to that Kirk Cousins domino for sure. Phil coming back and says, guys, how high do you think the kingpin will go? I have no idea what this means.
He's talking about Braden Fisk.
Oh,
so this is from the comics. This is the kingpin, the big guy, big old boy that
Punisher, right? Or Daredevil, excuse me.
Yeah, from Daredevil. There you go. So he went out there and had himself a combine. I mean, he's one of those guys definitely could see a big bump up because of what he did. When you look at the athletic testing, it makes you definitely go back to the tape and say, okay, did I miss something? He was down here at this point. Does this maybe show they didn't use him right? Where did you have him going before the combine?
Mid-third. I thought him mid-third. Not the longest guy, a little bit older, played at Mac, was at Central Michigan, I believe. I get my directional Michigan schools mixed up all the time. I think he was a Chippewa at Central Michigan, hit the portal, knew he was talented. Actually, I knew Iowa was interested in him, so I'm like, I better get my eyes on him. Oh, this guy is great. End up LSU and FSU look at him, and he ends up going to Florida State. Really good there. Tested great. I wish he was a little longer. Wish he was a little younger, but what can you do? I think he's going to end up being probably somebody taken in that 35 to 55 range. Yeah. I think that's probably about where he goes. I'm not expecting a first rounder from him, but really talented and a lot of energy too. So I'm expecting he's going to be a good player. And that's another one, man, I wish we had our bleeping second round pick because after pick, I'd run the simulators like after pick 50, 60. It's like, man, I feel like it's just a heap of guys that I'd be fine taking anywhere from 76 to 120 right now. I mean, I'll keep working through the back end. Typically, I'm pretty strong with the first 50 to 75, but he's going to end up going mid-second, I believe.
I'm with you there. I think usually if you have an outstanding combine, the most it can really move you up is probably about a round. Mm-hmm. Usually you don't see this like crazy jumps. There's every once in a while teams get really enamored with that athleticism. You see somebody just, like I said, run out of the gym. And you just are like, okay, we got to get that speed. There's a while there for the NFL. Speed was everything. And so like top wide receivers, you think of the Raiders. They were taking whoever ran the fastest 40 was guaranteed to be a Raider. And they were going to take them in the first round. It didn't matter if they were that kind of talent. And I loved it because usually those players busted for the Raiders. But yeah, that's the main thing there that I would say. I think mid-second sounds good.
Yeah. That's what I'm expecting as well. So, looking at Courtland Sutton right now, it doesn't say that he's a member of the Broncos or anything on his chat. I mean, he still has a Broncos pictures in here, but that's videos of him playing football. So I don't know what it looked like before. I don't really pay too much attention to the athletes' social media profiles as long as they're not, flashing weapons on Instagram Live or something like that. Shout out to was that Damon Arnett with the Raiders who did that? Just oh my goodness, foolish. Lawrence Rivera comes in and says, anyway, I could tell you guys on Brock Bowers to go get honestly help a new quarterback coming in with blocking and red zone plays. Yeah, Bowers weighing in at 243, I think it was a big win for me. I was worried that he was going to come in at about 230, not 235. That said, the fact that he came out to the field drills in his sweats, meaning that he wasn't going to test, I don't love that he's going to, have that artificial, hey, I weighed at 243. Now I'm not going to be weighed and do my testing at Georgia and look at my numbers. Well, you're testing at 230. So there's going to be a little bit of a lowercase, maybe a lower font size asterisk next to one or the other there. But he's definitely in play at 12. There's always risk at taking a position like tight end early, just because historical data. And our Brock Bowers, you can say he's an outlier, but he is a little bit different in terms of his size. And also tight ends historically, there's not good correlation between first round tight end usage and return on investment. I mean, you go through the list of tight ends. I think maybe 2 of the top 10 in the NFL right now are first round picks, and Hawkinson, but a lot of them are day 2 picks. And I think it's because it's a really slow developmental position. And a lot of college teams don't really know how to utilize and develop those types. So my advice would be to look for a big athlete and take them day 2 and hope for the best rather than using a first round pick on the tight end position, just based on what we've seen historically. Again, also there's an opportunity cost when you take a tight end round 1, means that you're not taking one of the positions that are pretty much first round or bust, such as an offensive tackle or an edge rusher or a good interior defensive lineman. But at the end of the day, you got to draft good players. And if you love him, you think he's special and he's just what you need for the offense, taking you that next level, then by all means, take him at 12. But there are factors that I think don't make it a total slam dunk for any team in the top 10.
I will say, I feel like the NFL is catching up just a little bit and figuring out how to use these players, at least as a receiving option. 3 of the top 10 rookie tight end seasons ever have happened from guys taken in the last three drafts. And so I think teams are maybe figuring that out a little bit and saying, okay, we're gonna use you as this receiving option because that's why we got you, and then we'll help you develop the rest of your game as we go. And I mean, again, is that worth pick 12?
Yeah. And the thing with tight end too, I mean, just in a little exercise here, you guys at home, we don't have time to do it today, but look at the last tight ends that have been drafted early in the first round, and then look at the next 5 players off the board. I'm guessing that there's going to be probably half the players taken after that tight end taken high is probably somebody you'd rather have. Like, no offense, sorry, Scott, cover your ears, but like the Falcons taking Kyle Pitts at 4, Jamar Chase, yes please. Jalen Waddle, better than Pitts. Penny Sewell, hello. Micah Parsons, Surtain. I mean, you could probably look back at when I love Hawkinson. It hurts me to say, but the next 5 guys off the board, probably somebody in there you'd rather have. So you're trying to play that value game and team building. So again, if you think he's going to be the guy, then that's great. Run with it. That's fine. But there is definitely historically based a little bit more risk involved with that kind of thing. And the other thing is the return on investment too. Like if you're taking a tight end that early, they pretty much have to become a perennial Pro Bowler, reaching all pro status a few times. Let's say the Broncos take Jared Verse at 12 and he ends up being a Pro Bowler, I don't know, twice in his career, guaranteed not a guarantee, but I think he probably gets a bigger contract on the open market than your multi-Pro Bowl tight end, just because of what the market dictates for the position. So again, at the end of the day, it's about taking the best guy available. And if you think he's special, don't overthink it. But don't be overconfident in your analysis too, because there's a wide range of outcomes that can happen.
So the 5 players after Hawkinson were drafted were Ed Oliver, Devin Bush, Jonah Williams, Rashawn Gary, Christian Wilkins. How many of those guys are you taking over TJ Hawkinson?
Probably
right
3.
now?
Probably 3.
3 of them?
Definitely taking Wilkins is going to get a bigger contract than what TJ Hawkinson just got. No doubt about that. I'm definitely taking Rashawn Gary over him, and probably taking Ed Oliver over him as well. So very defensive line. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm biased. I love the defensive linemen and the pass rushers, and that hurts me to say because I mean you can see all the Iowa stuff behind me here. I love Hawkinson, but at the end of the day, right? You got to get home. Cody W says, heard a lot of Mac Jones having big upside. I don't know about big upside, but big upside in Denver, though. I'm not a fan. He was coached by a defensive and special teams coach, so he looked terrible. Yeah, so Mac Jones, pretty good rookie season. Now, that being said, he had his rookie season, he made the playoffs, but he had like one of the best combinations of special teams and defensive DVOA that any quarterbacks had in like the last 5 years when they made the playoffs. So very much, on the back of defense and special teams out there in New England. But then here was promise, of course, with how he played his rookie year. And then it completely fell apart. Not just the coaching stuff out there in New England, but the weapons as well were just god awful. I mean, I can't even Jackson Smith and Jigba, who like busted knees, not very good out there. They took like that Thornton wide receiver, I think it was from Baylor, the really good track athlete in the second round. And he's been just an absolute no-show. Gesicki / Smith, those signings did absolutely diddly for them. The offensive line stuff they've done has been terrible. I mean, it is probably the worst offensive infrastructure in the NFL. And that's on top of the bad coaching. So I think Mac Jones for, a 6th-round pick. Sure. I mean, what is the risk there? I mean, seriously, what is the risk of getting up a 6th-round pick for somebody like that? So yeah, I'm about that. I don't know about big upside though. He's limited in athleticism and arm talent.
I think the other part that worries me with him is there's been a lot of smoke coming out of New England that he is not well liked in that locker room. That the backup quarterbacks, like other teammates, celebrated when Mac Jones got benched. Mm-hmm. Didn't work well with coaches at times. Obviously, didn't work well with his teammates. Some of those kind of things. Where there's smoke, sometimes there's fire. And I just would worry about that. Of what's that going to be like here in Denver? Does he need that new start? And maybe that helps him and he's humbled. I looked at, I know I've talked about him a few times on here, but Spencer Rattler, I loved some of his answers at the combine. I think he really has shown that guy's been humbled. He's got a better head on his shoulders than he did 2 years ago. They asked him the question of, what are you going to do with your first paycheck? And, a lot of the guys, when they asked that question, were like, oh, go buy a car, go buy my mom a house. He's like, I'm going to put it in the bank. I'm going to save it and try to build up my future. Yeah. That's a great answer for a guy that's 23 years old. I think that's great. They said the only other quarterback that answered that kind of way was JJ McCarthy. The rest of them were all car, house, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Again, I just see very little risk for that happening. And the Mac Jones stuff, I mean, it's odd because Bill Belichick didn't want him. It was a Kraft push down on him. We're taking the quarterback here situation. So combative, not really well liked, the good match from the beginning. So again, I just think there's so little, like, do the Broncos miss the draft capital that they gave up when they traded for Jonas Griffith? Did you forget that we even traded for Jonas Griffith? That's the type of cost we're talking about here. Right. So it's just so little risk with that involved. So if Sean Payton wants him and it just costs a 6, absolutely go get him. In fact, I would even approach him with a contract to pay him. He'll play out his 4th year. We're not going to do the 5th year option because it's $27 million for a quarterback or something. We'll give you a contract extension that's $8 million a year, and we'll give you $10 million of that guaranteed that kicks in after year 4. Still so little risk. And if he hits as even just a competent starting quarterback and he's still going to keep that 12th overall pick, that's a pretty good ROI, return on investment there. So again, it's certainly possible if Sean wants him and he evaluates like, I like Mac Jones as much as I like Bo Nix or Michael Penix or Rattler or whoever,
Right.
Michael Pratt, then sure. Again, very, very little risk involved. The risk is you might not have your quarterback for another year, but you might use number 12 overall and it takes you multiple years and you don't have your quarterback. You find out, 2 years from now. So not a great spot to be. Not a great spot to be. Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, at this point, what are your gut feelings that what the Broncos do with the 12th pick? I think that they would absolutely love to get a quarterback, and I think they will pursue avenues to add a quarterback in the end. But I think that they're not going to be able to get it. I think they'll probably end up trading back from 12 ever so slightly and take up probably best offensive lineman available. Let's just go with that.
I could see, I'm with you there. I do think that the top 4 guys, it's going to be very hard to get one of them. Let's say Kirk Cousins does go to Atlanta. Well, now Minnesota needs a quarterback and they're ahead of you and they have more draft picks than you do. So it's going to be a little bit easier for them to trade up. You have the Giants, who some people have talked about are looking at quarterback. So, that wouldn't surprise me if in the first 6 picks, 4 quarterbacks go in that area. And it's just going to be very hard for the Broncos to get into that kind of place to get one of them. Mm-hmm. So I could see them staying at 12 and taking Bo Nix. And I know that's going to cause a lot of people to it's not a move that makes you just jump out of your chair like, yes, we got our guy. Now I still feel pretty comfortable with it because Sean Payton, I feel like, can really do well of maximizing quarterbacks. But my guess would be a little bit of a trade back. And I think you can still get Nix, even if you trade back. There's a lot of talk coming out of the combine that he and Penix are somewhere in that 2nd, 3rd round pick area. That there wasn't many of them talking about him being a 1st round guy. Now, obviously, people could be trying to do that to drive down his value so he gets to some team like Tampa Bay if they don't get Baker Mayfield or something like that. But still, I think they could do a trade back and still get a quarterback.
Yeah. It's very possible. We'll see what happens. If they're sitting there at 12, I do hope that, and Sean says Nick doesn't want to admit we're drafting a quarterback early. It's certainly possible. I think that all the big wigs came out with their post-combine mock, and not a single one of them had Michael Penix or Nix in the 1st round, and all of them had J.J. McCarthy going before the Broncos pick at 12. So if they can get up, that's fine. I'm not against it, although the one who I'm really curious about, I don't know what's happening here, Carl. You maybe can explain it to me. It seems like Drake May is falling, and the NFL is not as in love with him as I am, and a lot of people are. I don't know. I've been wrong before. That's for damn sure. But if he falls to like pick 4 or 5 or 6, I'm like, oh, hello, what's going on here? Maybe even 3. I don't know, but we'll see what happens.
I wonder a little bit because I've listened to him talk, and he's not quite as dynamic as a Caleb Williams or a JJ McCarthy. I haven't really heard Jaden Daniels speak a whole lot, but Drake May, he's just kind of one of those like calm, cool, collected. Hey, just there's not a whole lot of excitement for his voice. And I think sometimes, especially not so much maybe the coaches, but like owners can fall in love with personality. And since they're the ones that are really making that final decision on quarterback, I think sometimes they can like those dynamic guys a little bit more. It sells better to your fans. Look at this guy up at the podium and him up there getting excited. And so I could maybe see that being a little bit of maybe an owner's push more so than a coach's push. Mm-hmm. Because to me, if you watch Drake May, I don't see how you let this guy get out of the first 3 picks. So I'm with you. If he falls there to like pick 5, 6, I'm calling up as quick as possible, trying to get that guy here to Denver because he looks like a perfect fit with Sean Payton.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be fun. We'll see what happens. Cody W comes in and says, do a 6 for Mac and draft a quarterback and have a quarterback battle. That's the other thing about Mac Jones too, is that there's no way he keeps you from going quarterback in the draft. It's just setting the table that you don't have to go with quarterback if it doesn't fall that way. So I'm not worried about it. I think, again, you asked me, what do I think happens at 12? Honestly, I think the Broncos trade back into pick 20 range, maybe take best cornerback, defensive lineman, offensive lineman, wide receiver available. Any of them will do for me, honestly, in that range. And then I think the Broncos might get a little bit aggressive with that extra capital they got and maybe try to go up and get Nicks in the 30 to 40 range. That's value I can get behind there. Now, is it an issue that the Broncos didn't like him enough to take him at 12, but then take him at 30 or 40? Maybe. I get a little Drew Lock valuation vibes from that. Not the same player, but valuation. But again, you're just trying to give yourself the best odds, and Broncos have a lot of holes. So again, all the prominent mockers, Lance Zierlein, Dane Brugler, Justin Reed. There was somebody else too. None of them had Nicks in the first round. Now, some of it's the quarterback fits in the back end of the first, but I think there's a chance you could probably get him early second. And if the Broncos move back from 12, maybe there's an opportunity then to finagle and move around the draft board. And so what we saw last season, Broncos got no issue moving up and down, sideways, around, standing on their head when it comes to moving in the draft.
So the other thing there, if you know that the rest of the NFL doesn't view this guy as a first round pick, why are you taking him at 12? I mean, I know if you really love this guy, like you just go ahead and get him. But if you know, hey, we could probably get this guy at pick 35 instead of having to use pick 12, and we can get another blue chip player to add to this roster on a rookie contract and still get our guy that we really like later in the draft. I mean, I know you're taking a chance there, obviously. You're hoping that everybody else has missed something on this player that you see. But I mean, it's kind of like Lamar Jackson. You know, a lot of NFL teams were kind of like, this isn't quite our kind of guy. And I could see that with Bo Nix because he doesn't have the greatest arm in the NFL. He's older prospect. You know, there's some red flags there with him. And I could see some NFL teams saying, yeah, this is just not our only guy. So I could see the Broncos willing to take that kind of risk because, again, there's some really good players in this draft early on. And it'd be hard to want to miss out on one of those guys. And I think you could convince Sean Payton, hey, if we do this trade back, we get these extra draft picks, then we can package up and get your guy. So we're getting two guys for the price of one that we really like.
Yeah, it's certainly possible there. So starting to wrap on it up here. It's about time. Courtland Sutton, a little cryptic on Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot, all the wide receivers. There's moves going to happen, and I wouldn't be shocked if any of these guys are gone. Who do you think is the most likely veteran to be back out of the guys we've been going through pretty consistently?
Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
I think, the trade market for safeties is not going to be great with how many safeties were just cut even today. So I don't think you're going to have the trade market for him. From what I've heard, I mean, again, this is all speculation. It doesn't seem like he's fighting the team as much when it comes to redoing his contract. You know, I've heard Bowles is not budged on a few things, you know, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Judy, some of those guys. I just think Justin Simmons, he's really a team first guy. And I think Sean Payton wants to have him around. I just think there's a really good chance he's here in Denver. What about you?
I think that's a good call. I was going to say Simmons as well. We'll see. I think, but Simmons, just the value you can get on him where he's been, unless you're doing him a service and he wants to go. That's a different conversation there. But yeah, I don't expect you to get nearly what he brings to the team in value. So hopefully he's back, and we're going to see what happens, guys. It's going to be fun. I mean, buckle up. We're entering the interesting time. A lot of Broncos insiders have said that a lot of guys could be on the move here for the Broncos. I do think that given how the draft is set up here, teams are going to be holding on to those top 100 picks with their life. So it might be pretty hard for the Broncos to find a market to move some of these guys. So hopefully there's ability to renegotiate some stuff and create some cap and keep some guys rather than having to outright release them. But we'll see. There's going to be some shifts coming up without a doubt, and definitely some turnover in the wide receiver room, potentially with Sutton, Judy, Patrick. We'll see. But any final thoughts, Carl, as we wrap it up?
Well, I was just seeing a couple comments about me saying his arm isn't as strong. It's not as strong as compared to some of these other guys in the class. That's the thing. He still has an NFL arm. I'm not trying to argue against that. I'm just saying a couple of these other guys, I mean, really, I'd say the top 4 guys, pretty good chance that most of them have a better arm than him. Michael Penix Jr. definitely has a better arm than him. Joe Milton has a better arm than him. I'd say he's got a better arm than Michael Pratt. Let's see, who else am I missing here? Rattler has a better arm than him. So that's what I'm saying is these guys, it's not that they're a better player. They just have a little bit more arm talent when it comes to being able to zip it in there. He's got more of a sinker than he does a true fastball. Now, he can still fit it in there. He did that plenty. It's just there's going to be a little bit of limitations on some of the things he can do just because of that.
Yep. Yeah, without a doubt. So, guys, going to wrap on it up here. We appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out with us on this Tuesday evening. Make sure you're following Carl and I on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumbler MHH. I'm at Nick Kendall MHH. Also, make sure you follow us at Mile High Huddle. Of course, if you're on Facebook and Facebook's not down like it was today, join us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to our channel, like our show, and share on your social media platforms. Appreciate everyone coming in. Carl, always good to see you. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, like all of you. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.